Sri Adi Shankaracharya's Atma Bodha, verses 21 to 40. Fools, because they lack in their powers of discrimination, superimpose on the Atman, which is the absolute existence knowledge, all the varied functions of the body and the senses, just as they attribute blue color and such to the sky. The tremblings that belong to the waters are attributed through ignorance to the reflected moon dancing on it. Likewise, agency of action, of enjoyment, and of other limitations, which really belong to the mind, are delusively understood as the nature of the self, the Atman. Attachment, desire, pleasure, pain, and such are perceived to exist so long as buddhi or mind functions. They are not perceived in deep sleep when the mind ceases to exist. Therefore, they belong to the mind alone and not to the Atman, the self. Just as luminosity is the nature of the sun, coolness of water, and heat of fire, so too the nature of the Atman, the self, is eternity, purity, reality, consciousness, and bliss. By the undiscriminating blending of the two, the existence knowledge aspect of the self and the thought wave of the intellect, there arises the notion of I know. Atman, the self, never does anything, and the intellect, of its own accord, has no capacity to experience I know. But the individuality in us thinks by mistake that it is the seer and the knower. Just as the person who regards a rope as a snake is overcome by fear, so also one who considers oneself as the ego is overcome by fear. The egocentric individuality in us regains fearlessness by realizing that it is not a jiva, an individual soul, but is itself the supreme soul. Just as a light illumines a pot or a jar, so also the Atman, the self, illumines the mind and the sense organs and such. These material objects by themselves cannot illumine themselves because they are inert. A lit lamp does not need another lamp to illumine its light. So too, Atman, the self, which is knowledge itself, needs no other knowledge to know it. By a process of negation of the conditionings, the upadhis, through the help of the scriptural statement, it is not this, it is not this, the oneness of the individual soul and the supreme soul, as indicated by the great Mahavakyas, which are the great proclamations, has to be realized. The body, etc., up to the causal body, that is, ignorance, which are objects perceived, are as perishable as bubbles. Realize through discrimination that I am the pure Brahman, ever completely separate from all these. I am other than the body, and so I am free from changes such as birth, wrinkling, senility, death, etc. I have nothing to do with the sense objects such as sound and taste, for I am without the sense organs. I am other than the mind, and hence I am free from sorrow, attachment, malice, and fear, for he is without breath and without mind, pure, etc., is the commandment of the great scripture, the Upanishads. I am without attributes and actions, eternal without any desire and thought, without any dirt, without any change, without form, ever liberated, ever pure. Like the space, I fill all things within and without, changeless and the same in all. At all times, I am pure, unattached, stainless, and motionless. I am indeed that supreme Brahman alone, which is eternal, pure, and free, one, indivisible, and non-dual, and of the nature of changeless knowledge infinite. The impression, I am Brahman, thus created by constant practice, destroys ignorance and the agitation caused by it, just as medicine destroys disease. Sitting in a solitary place, freeing the mind from desires, and controlling the senses, meditate with unswerving attention on the Atman, which is one without a second. The wise one should intelligently merge the entire world of objects in the Atman alone and constantly contemplate on the self, which is ever uncontaminated by anything, like the sky. He who has realized the Supreme discards all his identification with the objects of names and forms. He dwells as an embodiment of the infinite consciousness and bliss. He becomes the Self.